Hello, friends, and welcome to Worldbuild with us, the podcast where we create fantastical worlds with help from you, our listeners. My name is Rob Hilferty, and I'm here with my co-hosts Daniel Quinn and Courtney Staples. On today's episode, we are on part 3 of X number of things. We're in our long haul for the month of January, where we get to do a deep dive into a setting of our creation. No prompts from you, the listeners. And so, if this is your first time listening to the podcast, I would strongly recommend going back, listening to parts 1 and 2, with a slight caveat that this is not a typical series for us, because if you want us to build your world, you can always go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, where you can click the link, follow some instructions, and within a reasonable amount of time, we'll normally build worlds from you, our listeners. And if you want to follow us on social media, you can go to our YouTube, where you can click all the YouTube buttons that make the algorithm happy. Or you can follow us on Twitter at Let's Worldbuild. You can also come and talk to us more directly on our Discord, with a link for that in the description. Or if you're feeling particularly generous, you can always go to our Patreon and get access to all the sweet, sweet patron-only goodies that are available to you as patrons. But with that out of the way, let's go ahead and dive right back into part 3 of The World Under the Veil of Rains. Now, last we left off, we had just created some factions, introduced them into the world, and where we want to pick up today is, well, we have a world. We have all sorts of factions, and we have potential all over the place, but not very much conflict. And thus, today we are introducing points of conflict, areas of conflict into the world that will hopefully expand it just a little bit more. So, Courtney, why don't you start us off today by telling us all about the conflict you're bringing to the world?
So my conflict is that recently the leader of one of these Druidic societies, clans, whatever we want to call them, gave a gift to a leader of another group. But unfortunately, the recipient was deeply offended by the gift. And I wanted to leave it open so we can decide if it's something legitimately offensive or if it's just petty bullshit, if it was an intentional slight or just an innocent mistake. And also figured we can build out another faction or two. We don't just have to stick to the ones we made last time.
Yeah, of course. And this also strikes me as like a pretense for war as well, where it's just like, I'm going to pretend to be offended just so we can go to war over some kind of thing. But my question to you is, Courtney, like, why was the gift given to begin with?
That's a good question. I think it would have been like possibly a birthday gift, or like celebrating the anniversary of this person's rise to leadership, or something along those lines. Like, it wasn't out of the blue, or it wasn't
Like a peace treaty type thing.
Yeah, no, it wasn't something like that. It was just something you would normally get a gift for, basically. And I think partly I was inspired because I've been watching The Great recently, the show about
Catherine.
Yeah, it's like a very satirical, lighthearted take on her rise to power, and there's all this like petty bullshit all over the place.
Could it be a gift of ascension? Like, maybe this leader was appointed, and this is like a gift welcoming them into being a leader among other leaders.
Yeah, it's like they just were either voted in or just took the throne somehow, and this is their like welcome to the party kind of gift.
Like Trump sending a love note to North Korea or Russia.
Exactly like that. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, I'm thinking that what I do find interesting is maybe that, like, what is the history behind that? And obviously, the intention, like, we need to understand the intention there, right? Like, or do you think that we should figure out if it was an intentional slight or not, and why? Do we have to figure that out now, or do we have to kind of figure out what the implications and what the conflict thus has arisen thus far? Right? Because, like, yes, that is a conflict, but like, how is it expressing itself throughout the world?
Yeah, I think it would be like the relationship there has gotten extremely tense all of a sudden. And like you said, it could be going on the verge of war. It could be interrupting trade routes. It could lead to sort of groups forming, factions forming that hadn't formed before.
Okay. So this slight has caused an increase in tension amongst these two peoples.
Mhm.
And as a result, something has changed.
It would be an interesting wrinkle if the gift giver had good intentions but was
Mhm.
counseled by someone who doesn't.
Oh,
And so,
there
you know
we
what I
go.
mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, I like
So
that.
like there's an intent behind the gift giver to cause some kind of strife for whatever reason.
I like
Sure.
that. It could be like the gift was maybe, if this is like a monarchy kind of society, like the gift was something that had led to the previous ruler's death, or I
Mhm.
guess that even works if it's an elected thing. Like this gift
Mhm.
was, something that had fucked up the previous ruler, or it's could be just an offensive totem or symbol to these people. Could be the corpse of their like prized familiar animals or something.
Mhm.
Yeah, something with the dead would be cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm kind of imagining, like, imagine getting a bottle of wine from someone and the previous ruler died because of poisoned wine or something like that.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
there's a slight and an implication there that, like, had you not known how the person died, like, it would be like, that's an offense, like that, like, hope you don't die, or like, like that kind of thing, So
Mhm.
yeah, there's something interesting there that we can kind of do it. And I agree with Daniel. I like the idea that someone else counseled this person to make this
Mhm.
move. And that's kind of where we are right now.
Maybe it's an actual corpse. Because we don't know how their society is, their weird ass society.
Right.
Like the corpse of a person or of an animal?
Yes, of like a person.
Yeah.
Because remember, the dead can come back.
Can come back. Yeah.
Right.
Oh.
I feel like this is on you, Daniel. And by you, I mean specifically your stag folk who are into
Oh
the idea
yeah.
of like maintaining like corpses and stuff like that.
Uh-huh. Maybe okay. Yeah, like maybe because they have a stable of corpses. I could
Exactly.
imagine
Yeah.
finding the corpse of someone important to this other
Yeah.
figure and
Yeah.
presenting it like we found them.
Yeah.
Yeah. We brought them back as like a zombie. Here you go.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Aren't you happy to see your loved one again?
Right.
Oh my
Right.
god, that's awful.
But the intention is not to keep them zombified, but it's rather like, here, we
Yeah.
gave you the corpse back so we can,
We can
so
fix
you
it.
can lay it to rest. Exactly.
Mm.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
Also, okay, hold on here. What if the person who's ascending to this position of power is perhaps the reason that this person died in the first, their predecessor died in the first place? So by bringing them back the corpse, the elk folk are kind of suggesting
Oh.
that, like, hey, we know what you did. And so, like, there's layers to it where he's
Yeah.
offended like publicly, but internally he's like worried because, like, when is the blackmail coming? Like, when is the second
Yeah.
part of this coming?
Because it's
Yeah.
unspoken, right? Like,
Exactly.
so if the
Exactly.
leader was responsible for killing this person and it's not known, then
Right.
the gift giver doesn't know either. They're presenting it, but then
Exactly.
the leader knows, oh wow, they know, right?
Yes. And the
Yeah.
person who counseled them does know. So we're
Yes.
adding like
Yeah.
layers and layers of intrigue because the person who suggested the gift knows what happened and wants the truth to come to light, but the gift giver doesn't, but then the gift receiver does. So, like, there's all sorts of like plausible deniability and layers to the subterfuge of the gift as well. And that's really fucking fun. I love that.
It could also be like both sides have that council that's leading them in not the great direction. So like the new leader, he actually wasn't aware of this plot perhaps, but he was put into power by his counselors who basically want to have him as a puppet in power, as a
Mhm.
contrast to on the stag side that they were counseled to give this gift. And they think it's a great idea. They're like, yeah, sure, we can totally do it. That's great. And
Yeah.
but in reality, it's obviously offensive and unnerving.
Oh, this is fun as fuck. I love it. Okay, so this third party, are they a third faction that we're introducing here, or is this like within the one of the two groups that we're talking about?
I feel like it should be a new one because I don't know if it fits the vibe of the otter and crow people.
Yeah, sure. I agree with that.
Yeah.
We mean the leader, right? Like this.
Yeah. Like
Yeah.
the recipient. Yeah.
We talked about a nation that, because we said that cities are less common, right? Established places that are persistent. Because could be that fabled place, that's
Hmm.
a persistent city.
Oh,
Oh,
I see.
okay.
The one that you can only get to.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Because it could
Interesting.
be a journey to present this corpse to them.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Okay, so I think that my previous like kind of question is still a good one to bring up. And how is this how is this tension manifesting? Because if we're keeping it to a city, like what's the importance that this conflict is bringing? Is it like, okay, that city is now shut off to like travel or to, like traders? Like what has happened as a result of this insult and this kind of multi-layered intrigue that's going on? Like, how is that expressing itself in the populace itself?
What if it's caused the city to close itself while it still has all these visiting like ambassadors and leaders in it?
Mm,
Yeah. And so they can't get to it now.
Right, yeah, like they can't go home and there's gonna be some sort of like investigation or questioning about
right.
like how the hell did this happen kind of thing.
Maybe they're all
Uh,
locked in there.
Yeah,
Like they
exactly.
close it off and the people are
right.
trapped in there, and then they may not be able
Yeah.
to find their way back because there's only a certain amount of time when this place
Right.
Mhm.
is accessible.
I'm
Yeah.
imagining this is a situation where it's like Hercules and Zeus came to visit, Valhalla, and then like Heimdall turns off the Rainbow Bridge once they get there. It's like you're stuck
Mhm.
here with us because we have the keys to transport effectively, right?
Exactly, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So right now there's like a hostage situation going on. And I'm imagining that this is also fucking with the ability to travel through and to this city in the meantime.
Yes, exactly. Like they've
Okay.
completely shut down stuff. It's like Madagascar, shut down everything.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
Um,
God, that is
and
an ancient meme that I still love. It still cracks me up. Like I can picture it in my head and it still cracks me up.
so yeah, like if it's probably like not just the stag leaders, but also leaders from other groups that are also trapped
Oh
there.
yeah.
So it's like all these clans and societies are temporarily like without their leader. They might not even know it's happening. They might be like, wait, why did we just lose contact with them? Like, what the fuck?
Oh, I really love that. Yeah.
I mean, it seems to me a very straightforward plot in terms of whoever's doing this, because if you have a bunch of leaders trapped in a enclosed space, we can't
Mhm.
go anywhere. It makes it a lot easier to assassinate them,
Yep.
essentially usurp the power here from
Mhm.
various countries.
Mhm.
Right. And obviously, this is a very recent conflict, right? It sounds like something that has happened. It can't be more than a couple of weeks because I imagine that war would be declared very, very quickly otherwise.
Yeah, I think it's like right in the current moment that this is happening.
Right,
Hmm.
right. And I imagine that there's also like, okay, we expected our world leaders to be gone for X number of days, like maybe a
Mhm.
fortnight, maybe like a couple of weeks or something like that. And so it's like, okay, we know to expect to have them gone for that long. So it's not a big deal until like maybe we're approaching that or like only once that date has passed does the conflict really kick it up. Because again,
Mhm.
you're talking about like a declaration of war. Like where the fuck are our leaders? Like if we don't hear from them, we are going to attack you even though your gates are closed. Like we're going to surround your lands until it's done or until it
Mhm.
will open up. So
Mhm.
yeah, I suppose this brings up a question. Can you forcibly open some of these like cordoned off areas, or is that something that like how do they control that flow? How do they cut their city off?
I mean,
Mhm.
I don't know what you think, but I mean, I imagine for one, it's already hard to approach because of whatever environmental concerns there are going on.
Mhm.
But I bet if they were building this, they would have made it so that the one approach is well defended
Right.
and
Mhm.
narrow.
Okay. So it's not a matter of it's impossible, but it's rather they've made it incredibly difficult to take those fortifications.
Yeah, and I bet also like it's only that one spot is only accessible safely during this period of time when the storms are not insane.
Yeah.
Mm, gotcha. Okay.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense, and, maybe they're even doing something with the weather, like manipulating in some way so that the weather maps don't reflect what's happening currently.
Interesting. Yeah. So I suppose that then begs the question, like, what kind of weather do they manipulate then? This kind of cordoned off city type folk.
Mm.
Because the thing that I'm thinking of is, why would all of the world leaders come and congratulate or at least visit this one? It seems like they would have to have a relatively valuable power to have, right? And if that's the case, I can't help but imagine that they have some kind of power over sunlight or the sun in some way, because a lot of other weather relies on how powerful and how like bright the sun is, right?
I mean, perhaps the weather patterns throughout the world, because we know that there are mapping systems to understand them, right? But perhaps there is some belief, whether it's true or not, that this city, because it's persistent, has some influence over those patterns. And so perhaps like part of this is a festival or a ritual where when the leader is elected, they determine the future weather patterns of the world.
Yeah.
But I don't know if that's true or not. It might be only somewhat true. Maybe they have some influence, like the sun is part of it and that
Sure.
kind of thing.
So wait, is this maybe not an entirely magical city or like a city that is of the archdruids, but maybe they're just a city of cartographers? Like, they're incredibly important because they have all of this information, but they don't necessarily have the ability to manipulate that weather in some way. They just have the knowledge of it.
Yeah, I like the idea that it's cartographers, but I also like the idea that there is some belief that's probably not true, that they do have an impact. Like, now I'm thinking of like Groundhog Day, and they do something really dumb as their ritual, and everybody like claps and it's like, yay, we know what the weather's going to be like for the next 10 years or whatever, something like that.
Oh yeah, okay, that's
100%. Yeah. Because it's like I mean, think about our own meteorologists, right? I'm not shitting on meteorologists here, but as time has progressed, we get better at science and the chaos theory behind the weather becomes more clear. But there's a certain like what do you call it? Like prophetism to this, right? Like there's a certain uncertainty baked into it that we look at the meteorologists giving us a forecast and it should be legitimate and we rely on it. And I bet it's similar in their world.
Yeah,
we're looking at like the Farmer's Almanac, right? Where it's like those things that had been like mapped out years in advance, like that kind of thing. I think that's the version that we're on now in this particular setting. We're not on like, well, we've got weather patterns and like, forecasts and stuff like that. It's like, we've got the Farmer's Almanac, and boy, is it's basically a wizard's tome. Like, you've got it to read and interpret this thing, but like, that's, I imagine, what they're kind of like producing in this way.
Yeah, I like that. Or it's like, like I said, some kind of ridiculous Groundhog Day style ceremony or like astrology or anything could be in there. And they predict, the next duration of time and kind of offer their guidance to the leaders that have gathered.
Okay, maybe it's not they're holding them hostage, but the newly appointed leader refuses to like prognosticate the weather for the next couple of years until this issue has been resolved. So it's not a violent conflict, but it's like, I'm being a stubborn little baby about it. And like, that's why the leaders have to stay there. Like, they have to implore this new leader, like, come on, like, we really need to. So that way, like, you take the edge off of like a very violent political situation, but you still maintain a lot of the things that make it interesting by keeping all of the leaders there.
He's probably doing an investigation because he has probably assumed someone is out to get him, since he murdered or not him, but like we established he doesn't know, but there's he knows that there's some blackmail afoot, right?
And I'm sure his like counsel is telling him like, oh, this should be investigated because they were the ones behind the murder and so on.
The actual murder, and then there could be outward pressure because the gates are closed, and like we say, their leaders are locked in here, and these other nations, knowing that this door is visible now, like they might be saying like, well, maybe we need to march our armies up because they're to put pressure on them to let our leaders out, and there's the possibility of war, which may be what the original conspirator intended.
And then so there's all that tension on the outside, but then I'm picturing like switching to the inside, and it's just like a bunch of kind of snooty people like being offended about random things and drinking wine and yelling at each other occasionally. And I feel like the atmosphere is very different depending on which side of the wall you're on.
Yeah, plus you get a bunch of like big personalities that are all very different, and I feel like that's like an inevitable powder keg. Plus,
Yeah.
plus I think there's also the possibility that rather than like I refuse to prognosticate, there's also like, oh yeah, the weather's not right, or I've got a headache, or something's going on where I'm not able to prognosticate. But what they're really doing is like buying time while their inquisitors go and like make sure that everything's, you know, kind of like on the up and up, that type of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. Like they're biding time until like the very last minute when
Yeah.
the weather will close around the city and cut it off fully.
Right. And that also what's also interesting about this that we haven't talked about is that it kind of like puts a little bit of pressure on the elk as well, because like the elk folk are the one who are like the cause or the reason behind this slight. And so the other like leaders are like, come the fuck on, elk people. Like, why did you have to do it that way? You know, like blah, 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 like that kind of thing, you know?
Right. Like, don't you remember 100 years ago when you gave a corpse to another thing? And they really, people just don't like getting corpses as gifts. Like, we thought we've been through this with you. Like, come on.
Corpses are not presents. You don't do that. Yeah. Yeah. Okay. All right. So that is a fascinating scenario. And honestly, I feel like that's where we should stop because we've created some simmering tension that we can maybe come back to. Plus, we've created another faction in and of itself through these cartographers. Fascinating. Love it. Fabulous. No problem. So, Daniel, why don't you bring us through what is the conflict that you've created for us in this world?
Mine is very simple and open-ended, and it is that the dead have gained intention.
Oh, mass intention, or is it like how does it work exactly?
We can do it either way. My initial thought was a particular dead is woken up and has free will now, or it could be a group. But either way, I think it works.
So I have a weird idea here. So is this intention spreading much like a zombie virus? So is it like only among the undead that are being affected, but each time they, you know, like a corpse gets near one of these already infected undead, they become suddenly also burdened with intention and intelligence?
I mean, maybe there is a singular undead that is capable of doing this to others, and it's traveling, and like you're saying, it creates that effect of like awakening other undead.
Yes. Okay. That's pretty cool because now you have like a religious pilgrimage or something like that, or like a shepherd of rot of some kind, you know, like that kind of thing.
I'm picturing them, and obviously I don't want to throw everything onto the Stag faction here, but I'm picturing this person like riding on a skeletal stag or skeletal horse or something like that, like a very ominous, foreboding horseman of the apocalypse kind of vibe.
I was hoping for a horse there, Courtney, just because I like the imagery, but a stag also works as a harbinger because that's also a cool thing that you can ride that's spooky. So yeah.
I just don't want to throw all the blame for all bad situations onto the Stag clan here.
So it turns out that my conflict also might kind of involve the Stag a little bit as well, but we'll get to that in just a bit. So
I mean, maybe that's the setting telling us that the Stags could be villains, you know?
Yeah, that's true.
Kind of, yeah. But let's answer some more questions about this shepherd that we've got, this kind of like intentionality behind the dead that we've created here. What's going on? What other questions might we have about this scenario, this conflict?
How long has it been going on for?
I think it would have to be. I think the public awareness of this would be very limited. Like, so that's recent, but it probably has been happening for some time because I can imagine this particular dead that is riding the stag traveling for a great time, finding one or two, and then finding 3 or 4, and then their group gets a little bigger and bigger, you know?
Did this person start from the hole?
Oh, yes, because you said that.
Okay. Perfect.
Why not?
Yeah.
Okay, honestly, those are my favorite moments where they're like, I didn't think that, but because you said it, yes, it is now true. Like that, those are some of my
100%.
favorite things, you know.
Yeah.
So, okay, I suppose my question is, so much like Courtney's, like, what is the direct impact that this is having upon the world? How is this conflict manifesting itself among day-to-day operations?
It's got to be terror and fear, because even if this group of roving undead that is conscious doesn't have malicious intent necessarily, like you're seeing what you used to be seeing the dead as being these things you encounter, you burn them, you can corral them, as we learned with the stags. They don't really pose a threat, but to see them organizing and having armaments potentially and writing things and moving as one probably terrifies people.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. I mean, imagine if a zombie had a gun. Like, come on, that'd be scary as fuck, right? Yeah.
And can talk now.
yeah, exactly.
Aside, has there ever been a zombie movie where the zombies have guns?
Oh yeah, that's absolutely a thing I was making
Okay.
fun of. It's George Romero's Land of the Dead, I believe.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
Yeah,
Okay.
you shouldn't. It's not very good. It's the one with Dennis Hopper, and he lives in like a high-rise building and stuff like that. And one of the zombies learns how to shoot a gun, and then that's pretty much it. Yeah.
Okay.
But in all seriousness, like there is like something interesting about, you know, creating a figure that is a voice of the dead or a voice for the dead, you know, like where this is the one that speaks for the silent, right? Like that is kind of a fascinating idea.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. That's what I had in mind. Like when you said a shepherd of rot, like I think that resonates because it's someone who, we know the dead are people they can't speak, and they are a shadow of the thing they were, right, left over on this earth, and they're kind of imprisoned. So the sense of this person being a shepherd or someone giving freedom to them is interesting.
Yeah.
Cool.
So are they just following this person, or do they have a will of their own in some way?
I think maybe in order to make it work mechanically, I think maybe the power has to come from him, and so if you stray too far from him, then you fall back into your old self.
Oh, that's really interesting, because that creates a big target as well as a big old danger zone, or a perceived danger zone, right? Like if we heard that there was a horde of zombies coming towards us, we'd be concerned, right? Like
right.
if we knew nothing about the zombies, there's like, oh, there's a, you know, like people get like scared by like migrant caravans, let alone like undead zombies, you know, like,
yeah.
The undead Mexicans is like the worst thing possible. So, right? You know, I can say this because I am Latino. So
I don't think that's true, but we're going to move on anyway, Daniel.
I'm brown, guys, so it's fine. It's fine.
I mean, that part is true. Like Daniel is Latino, but I'm saying anyway, we're moving on. We're moving on from this.
So
Jesus Christ.
So in a way, it's like almost like another weather pattern forming that people have to keep track of, except it's the horde of undead.
Very astute observation, Courtney. That's phenomenal. Yeah, great. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's dope as shit, man.
Oh, and so like, given that the hidden city is made of cartographers, are they aware of this? Are they like keeping an eye on it, tracking it currently?
I think they're headed there, because there must be some deep connection between the dead and their situation, the world below, and the storms. And I imagine this shepherd has special, and maybe he is a cartographer himself, you know, and he's going to get the book of the storms or something. That's his plan.
Right. That was going to be my next question, actually, is what is the intentionality? Are they marching towards the hole in the sea? Are they going to get something and then turning around? Like, what are we thinking here?
I mean, my initial thought is, because Courtney said, where did he come from the hole? I think he came from the hole, right? So he's coming out of the hole, going to the city, collecting followers, right? With the intent of seizing the knowledge that's there for some reason. And I think it has to do perhaps with, I don't know, like opening up the underworld. I don't know what his intention is. I don't think that it's necessarily fundamentally evil. It's not like he's going to go there to eat everyone. I think that he plans to do something that will have deleterious effects on the living, but his larger vision is bigger than that, and
Right.
that's why it's terrifying.
Maybe he wants to like merge the two worlds together.
Ooh,
That's his ultimate goal.
I like that. Maybe he wants to wake everyone up, you know?
Yeah, yeah.
So we've got a Linkin Park villain. Oh no, I'm sorry, an Evanescence villain who wants to wake everyone up
Yes.
inside. But
Yes.
I do have a question though, Daniel. So like if they're from the hole, right, the maelstrom in the middle of the sea that's slowly growing day by day, what demarcates them as being from the maelstrom, as being from the hole? I have to imagine that like you would be able to pick out the shepherd through some kind of like, like maybe they have like a fragment of a growing kind of maelstrom or something that's a simulacra of the maelstrom in their chest or something like that. But
Oh, I like
what
that.
yeah, like is that what demarcates them as being from the maelstrom, or like what
Do
is it?
that.
What are
They
we
got a
looking at?
hole in them. That's something.
Yeah.
Maybe like
Mhm.
when they find their people to wake up, they like touch them and it opens a hole in their chest that swirls and stuff.
Mm.
Ooh. Oh, okay. Yeah, that's
Or in their
fucking
forehead or
terrifying.
something weird. I don't
Yeah,
know.
like a third eye kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah. So if we do if we do have the hole in the head, then we can have a Nine Inch Nails song in there as well with head like a
Yes.
hole. So I mean, like we can go all the genres there. That's no problem. But yeah, I also like that idea because it also, I imagine that it also kind of obfuscates or obscures their identity in some way as well. So it's like, imagine that the hole is taking up from their upper, like their upper jaw upward. It's like replaced with a giant hole. It kind of like removes identity by removing the eyes and the face in some way, which is an interesting kind of concept that we can run with as well.
That's very Junji Ito.
A little bit, yes, a little Junji Ito, but like a swirling energy vortex instead of just like meat and Uzumaki,
And you can play with it aesthetically too. Like if you wanted them to be easier to blend in, potentially, you could have this hole become visible under certain conditions, right?
Oh
So
yeah.
that
Oh,
way you could have them infiltrate potentially
Mm.
or walk among the living, and it's only noticeable when they're in a huge herd together,
or
Mm.
it could be like we were talking about last time, where it's like it's only visible on the spirit realm or something like that. So like only people who are able to see into both
Uh,
realms would be able to see like, oh no, that's really terrifying because they see this like horde of undead with like swirling energy vortexes in their heads, right? Like that kind of thing. Like that's pretty cool to think about. Like, like, oh yeah, it's scary enough to see them as a horde of undead, and then you look at them through spirit realm eyes, and you're like, oh, that's even worse. That's way scarier now. Like that kind of thing.
Put on the sunglasses and see their true form.
Yes. Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. Damn, we're getting so referential this episode. I love it.
I wonder if the like the spirit sight thing is maybe it's um something from like the Stag clan because they have that connection with the undead. So it's like looking through a very like maybe just a very very thin uh shit, what's it called? The thin leather not
A
parchment.
veil.
Maybe
Oh,
perhaps a veil.
I
But
mean, it's in the name, Courtney.
that's
Like,
true.
like some kind of a veil, perhaps. I don't know. Or maybe 1,000 of them, for example. Yeah.
Vellum, I think is what I was thinking of.
Oh, the like leathery parchment type stuff. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
exactly.
That's
Something like that.
Silverman.
But yeah,
Yeah.
maybe it is literally a veil that you can
Mhm.
wear and it gives you the sight.
And to be fair to the elk folk, right? Like if they're dealing with death, then they're probably going to like wear funeral veils or something like that. I think that might be
Mm,
appropriate, but who knows? Like
yeah.
because I mean I did, and I'm not intentionally bringing them up, but the other faction that I was planning on bringing is like the Night Lord, which are all like bats of some kind, and I
Mm,
can also imagine them being able to see without their eyes because again, I'm taking totems from bats. That makes sense to me as well.
yeah.
Um, just to make sure that not everything is connected to the elks. You know what I mean?
Mm.
because boy, Daniel, you created a real banger of a faction there, but we got to spread the love just a little bit, I think. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
I feel like you could swap them out too. Like if you're just fiddling
yeah.
with stuff, like especially the first one, you could potentially pick any faction to be the one who started it. They basically just reverse your reasons to make it work, you know?
Sure. Sure. Yeah. All right. Well, what do we have any other questions about Daniel's faction? Because I feel like that's real cut and dry, but really awesome and easy to kind of plug in.
I think we're good.
Yeah, I think it's really cool.
All right, cool. We can move on. We've got the final conflict, which is mine. So let's see. Mine is unsurprisingly perhaps a little involved, but I've also tried to keep it as simple as possible as I wanted to make it. But very simply put, there is a bunch of refugees or immigrants coming from the north that are being forced into the southern lands due to an unrelenting and surprisingly unseasonal winter. So there is a nonstop, never-ending winter that has struck their lands that has caused them to start coming down from the north in droves. What's interesting about this is a couple of things. First of all, I was thinking about we have rains that affect magic, right? Like rains that resurrect the dead. And what is snow if not frozen rain? So I'm like, okay, there's got to be some really cool magical stuff that can happen that the snow is doing to the energy as well. I'm leaving that kind of door open because I didn't have any interesting ideas. But one thing that I did want to do is the stories that are coming from the north blame some kind of figure for the endless snowstorms, for the endless blizzards. Some of them blame a stag-headed creature, while others blame a giant bear, and others still blame a giant snow owl that are, the reason for these snowstorms. But either way, it seems that winter's presence has been personified, and it's creating intense strife for the people of the north.
So to make sure I understand the migration pattern, like the direction of the snow is moving people from where to where?
So they're coming from the north to the south.
So they're trying to get out of there, basically.
Yeah, exactly.
It's a disaster zone. Okay.
Yeah, right. And the inability to harvest food is a death sentence. So it's we've got to get out of here if we want to survive.
Is it spreading? Like, is it getting larger?
So that's actually something I was kind of curious to talk about is I think it'd be interesting to see if some of those snowstorms, those unseasonal snowstorms start drifting down, and maybe they're not like blizzards at first, but why is it snowing when it's not even like the snow is actually sticking to the warm summer ground? What's going on there? There's something interesting that shouldn't be. So I did have that in mind a little bit. Yeah.
It's kind of funny because the other conflict that I had been toying with was something about a failure of a crop harvest has led to sort of trickle down effects with healing medicines or something like that. So I do feel like this would have a lot of issues, a lot of implications stemming from it.
Implications, you say,
yes,
Courtney?
Yes, so many implications.
Oh my.
Which is not just the people moving, but everything about their culture and what sorts of things and practices they're bringing with them, and obviously anything that they were responsible for growing or hunting or what have you up in the north. It's now lost.
In terms of the suspected cause, is there an underlying truth, or is it more like people are speculating what type of creature this might be or thing? So for example, in our first one, we had the apparent truth and then the secret truth. There's actually a conspirator. Is there a second level going on that we're not aware of?
I was also leaving that up to interpretation. I just liked the idea that there were multiple conflicting rumors about the source of this thing. And also I was there's also potentiality for it being some kind of an arch villain as well, where it's a literal manifestation of winter has come by and it just so happens to be a shapeshifter or something like that. But again, I'm leaving that. I was leaving that deliberately open because I'm kind of interested to see what you guys bring to it as well. Yeah.
The The reason why I asked is because I think it would be interesting if the rumors of a monster, essentially a stag-headed creature, for example, are being spread deliberately because
Mhm.
something else
Yeah,
is at
yeah.
work, behind the storm.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking too, like, if groups are taking advantage of this to spread rumors and, like, further blame the Stag clan, the Elk
Mhm.
clan, for everything, but this could just be, like, a completely unrelated issue up in the north where maybe something was unearthed that's causing
Mm.
this, and, yeah, I also imagine that the cartographers in the sort of disappearing city are also using this to their advantage as, like, a way to, like, delay their, declaration of the
Mm.
next decade or whatever's weather.
And I would also imagine that the leader of the North is also using this as like a platform to be like, listen, it's really bad. We need your help. So there's multiple kind of political maneuverings that are happening at
Mhm.
this kind of summit as well.
So if the storms are in some way a tool, what are possible aims that could be achieved by disrupting your own landscape, driving people further away from it, and potentially like hurting the people living there? If this is a scheme, I'm wondering
Mhm.
what are the potential benefits of doing this for whoever's scheming?
An excellent question.
Mhm.
Because I'm imagining that this is also like the work of a faction, if that's the case.
Mhm. Right.
But I'm also thinking like my very original idea was that this is actually a living familiar that has gone like mad with either like starvation or something. So it's basically like a Tarrasque level threat that is bringing a walking blizzard with it wherever it goes. But I think that that's a little bit too simple for me. So I to answer your question, I have no fucking idea. Um,
Mhm.
I mean, I like the idea Courtney said unearthing something. I
Mhm.
wonder if perhaps because we never really established truly the technology level of their world. Only we have established that like they operate at a certain level. Like for
Mhm.
example, you said farmers almanac, they're not real meteorologists. But I wonder if like perhaps they unearthed some older thing that
Yeah.
it has influence over the weather in a way that's
mm,
unpredictable. And now this faction has control over it.
I was thinking similar, except it might not even be in control of the weather, but it's just like some very powerful thing that this faction is creating these storms to like push people away from so they can kind of keep it for themselves. Or alternatively, on like the flip side, it could be an effort to save those people by forcing them to migrate because there's been this great danger on Earth.
Is it
mm.
a new hole maker?
That's what, yeah, maybe the beginning signs of a new hole.
Hmm.
It's what it's what they used to call me in my Tinder days, Daniel, the homemaker.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like, because we know the druids sacrificed themselves to stop a hole from
Mhm.
growing larger, right?
Right,
And to
right.
separate the worlds. So I can imagine
Oh,
if this is
fuck,
something
yeah.
on Earth, like, and it's opening one, whether intentional or not, it could be a mixture of like, let's get these people out of here, or also
Mhm.
like,
Yeah,
or it could be disguise what we're doing so that the
Yeah.
world's people can't stop us.
yeah, no, I love that idea. I'm now picturing this cinematically where like you see like two druids or two people who are like from a particular clan and like you've got to see this. Like there's a third one who's like urging them
Mhm.
forward. And then you crest a mountain and you look down into this valley and there's a new maelstrom. And they're like,
Yeah.
oh fuck.
And it's all
Mhm.
snow coming out and stuff.
Yeah, it's like
Mhm.
now it's spreading, and it's like, oh god, this is even. Oh, actually, ooh,
Not
the
again.
fact that no, yeah, no, the fact that there is a maelstrom that is spitting out the snow, I had not considered that, but that's really
Yeah.
interesting,
It's
actually.
Mhm.
vomiting. Maybe the other one's like a whole things go into it. This one's vomiting shit out.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
we've got white hole, black hole type stuff going on here. Yeah,
Exactly.
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
Mhm.
And there
Scientific term,
could be
scientifically.
there could be some relationship between the two
Mhm.
as well, like
Yeah, like
magical.
there's an entry point and exit point, basically,
Mhm. Mhm.
because if the hole is like in the ocean and it's sucking water in, maybe through the process of going through the maelstrom, it's freezing it and coming out the other end as
Yeah.
like ice or
It's
snow.
it's sort of funny because you keep referring to the hole as, like, in the ocean and bringing in water, but I'm picturing it more as, like, a a crater that's sort of raised. Maybe it's still in the middle of the ocean, but like it itself is not draining water or filled with water. It's just sort of this like enormous hole thing.
Well, the reason I'm imagining that is because if it's a hole that is in the like cracking reality open,
Mm.
right? Then eventually it's going to subsume land, right? It's going to spread to the point where the land falls in. So eventually you're going to get to a point where it's like there's just water, right? So like water is like trickling into this thing or like, coming in like waterfalls effectively.
You
Yeah.
can have both. Like if the thing
Yeah.
is large enough,
for sure.
right? Like it could crack. It could be like eye-shaped almost, where it's like parts of it cut into the ocean, and or not into the ocean, but cut further, like into the waters. And then it's like you've got these waterfall rivers at the edges of the islet, and then the middle is raised up like a volcano.
Yeah.
Should be wild.
Yeah. Interesting.
Very.
Yeah. Also wondering if like the presence of this undead shepherd figure is related to that. Like, is that actually where he's headed? And maybe just that city happens to be in the path of it, and so that's why they think it's heading there. Or like, is he trying to close it? Is he trying to open it further?
Well, we know that we said earlier that the shepherd came from the maelstrom, came from the hole, but we didn't say which one because now we've got two. So do they come from the wintry one and now they're coming down south to the oceanic one? Like what are we thinking here? Because that now we have options.
I still prefer that it came from the first one and is heading to the second. I just feel like it's maybe less expected and kind of less like Game of Thronesy. Winter is coming.
I'm totally fine with that. Yeah.
Daniel,
I think that's great. Yeah.
Okay, cool.
I have no objections, but I'm fine.
Okay. All right. Yeah, this is all coming together now. Because this is pretty cool. I'm digging this now. This is dope. I suppose my next question becomes, where do we go from here?
It would be interesting to, I mean, not that we have time now, but like to see if these conflicts have a through line,
Yeah. I'm also wondering, should we roll a twist?
Oh, that's true.
Yeah,
I mean,
true.
we normally spend 4 episodes on the extended one. So I think that now is the perfect time to roll our newly refreshed twist list. Right? And we've got new twists from both Diplo and Kaiser. So if you're a patron and want to suggest a twist, guess what? Now is your time to do it. Or really anytime. So yeah, let's go ahead and roll some dice and figure out what the twist is in this world. And our twist for this world is, let's see. Okay, Courtney, this is your fault. It says Cillian Murphy is our twist for this episode. So, well, now I can't help but think that the shepherd looks like Cillian Murphy, and so does all of the leaders. They all look like Cillian Murphy now. So
all played by Cillian Murphy. Yes.
Yes, exactly. We've got an entire series made of Cillian Murphys. So, again, I actually love this twist because it allows us to be interpretive with what a Cillian Murphy is. So for next time, we're going to come with our reconciliation of the twist. And what else do we need besides that? Or is Cillian Murphy enough to carry us through?
That's enough. Yeah.
I feel like that's enough. And then, we can try to come up with some quests and stuff.
Oh, okay. How about this? We come with the reconciliation and a question that has not been answered about the world that you'd like to have answered. How about that?
Sure.
Cool. Okay. So with that being rolled, with that twist on the horizon, again, thank you to Courtney for Cillian Murphy. It is time that we close out this episode. So remember that if you want us to build your world, you can always go to our website, worldbuildwithus.com, where you can click the link, follow some instructions, and within a reasonable amount of time, we'll be building your world. If you want to follow us on social media, we're on YouTube, where you can click the YouTube buttons to make them happy. If you're listening to this on YouTube right now, go ahead and scroll down and leave a comment telling us what your favorite Cillian Murphy movie is. Or if you want to follow us on social media, otherwise, you can go to our Twitter at Let's Worldbuild. Of course, if you want to talk to us more directly, you can always go to our Discord and chat with us about anything at all. Oh, adding twists, for example, that'd be a great place to do that. Or if you want to support us more directly, or if you're feeling particularly generous, you can always go to our Patreon, where you'll get access to sweet, sweet patron-only goodies like 2 episodes per prompt, or access to Too Hot for Broadcast, or our patron-only Discord known as the Aphid Lounge. And we've also got the Aphid Lounge itself, which is a monthly-ish podcast for patrons only. And with all of that done, that's going to do it for this episode of World Build with us. Remember that we love you very much, and we're going to get through this together. Until next week.